I'm going to take you through opening your Little Bird R&R Apron Kit. You can see I put the business card aside, and now I'm looking at the bill of materials. This is everything that's going to be in the kit, so you'll want to look at that, and there'll be little baggies in there. That's the lace. That's little buttons for the bodice. There's the bodice and lining. See, I'm putting the tags with it, and you'll want to do that. They're all wrapped up inside. Now there's the pockets with their trim. And now we have the ties that are going around the waist. We're going to put those to the side because we're going to work on that first. And there's the skirt and the waistband up there. Now I'm pulling out the other little pieces, and those are the ruffles. There's 3 ruffles plus that optional one, and that's the way I'm going to lay them out. And I would recommend you lay everything out and look at the checklist. Make sure you've got everything. Yeah, check it off one more time, and we're going to start to sew. And we're going to start with the ties. You fold them in half. We're going to sew down one end and off the other side, and then turn them right side out. And I'll show you that in a minute here, and bring them back with a nice good press. Okay, now that we have our package open and have everything all laid out, I'm going to take you through. We're going to sew the ties first and turn them right side out, and then top stitch them. I'm going to take them to the sewing machine and do that, and then I'll bring it back and give them a good press and show you what we're going to do next to top stitch them. And then we're going to work on the pockets, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then I'll stitch them and bring them back and show you what they look like. And then we're going to move on to the rest of the bodice. Alrighty, now we have the first tie stitched, and as I said, we put it right sides together and stitched it down along the edge, left one end open. So now what we're going to do is, I have my trusted little turner stick here. We take this, and a lot of people do this differently. They'll take a pin and put it in there, and they have some fancy turner things. I just have a little chopstick that I use. You stick it in the one end, push it up through gently. You can use a pencil, anything that'll poke through there and not poke through the end of that. And it comes out the other end. Now I usually try to straighten that end, feel it out like that before I do anything else. And then turn it right side out. It's like magic. And I'll take it over to the ironing board and iron it along the edge. And then once I have the other 3 straps done, the same thing, and I give them a good press, then I'll take them back to the sewing machine and I'll top stitch them along the edge all the way down, across, and back again. And usually what I'll do is, before I do that top stitch, I'll tuck this end in so both ends are finished. You don't really need to do that, but it just makes it kind of nice and neat. I don't often do things neat, but we're going to do that. We start with the straps because that'll make you feel like you've accomplished something, and it's super easy. So I'll be back. And here we are with our little ties all sewn together, turned right side out. Now I have to take them back to the machine, and I'm going to top stitch them down the edges, just as a straight stitch, down and around, so they're all perfect. I was just thinking as I was sewing these that like any project, making an apron has many pieces. And the analogy that I make is that a project with pieces like this, how do you go about getting it done? Well, it's just like eating an elephant. Yep, making an apron is like eating an elephant. You just do it one bite at a time. So one little step at a time. So we're taking the first 2 easy steps because you feel like you've accomplished something. We're going to get all 4 ties done. These are the 2 bodice and neck ties, and these are the 2 waist ties. And then we're going to move on to the pockets and finish those. And then we'll come back and I'll walk you through the steps of finishing the bodice. And there we are, all 4 ties done. Oh, so proud of them. And now we'll put these aside over here, finished products, and we'll move on to our pockets. Now I am including in the kit I'm including 2 different pieces of trim, and you can pick which one you want. Save the other one for later. And there's the pocket lining, and here's the pockets. Now, I apologize for this. I need to mount my phone again. There we go. So what you do is you take your pockets. This is your front pocket fronts. And you take your linings and you put them right sides together like this. And like this. Now, we leave the tops open here, and we're going to sew all the way around, and then we're going to turn it right side out, give it a good press, and top stitch it. And then after I've sewn this, turned it right side out, pressed it, I'll come back and I'll talk about how I'm going to put the bias binding on the top and other ways that you might want to trim your pockets. And that's totally up to you. It's really kind of fun to fancy up the pockets a little bit if you want. And I put in each one of the kits, I put a few little extra buttons, like I have a little heart button in here, and have a couple red buttons, a couple black buttons. You'll need 1 button for the front of your bodice. And after that, you can use the other buttons for whatever you want. I like to trim the top of the bodice with a couple extra buttons. Sometimes I trim the pockets. And it just makes the apron yours and makes it one of a kind. Alrighty then, aren't they just the cutest little things you've ever seen? Now, like I said before, I'm going to get out my apron. Now, one of the things that you'll notice with this, the way that you can tell the apron top from the lining, well, it's easy in this case because the lining is solid colored and the apron top is the roosters. But what you can tell is the apron top is shorter. And the reason for that, let me see if I can get these out of the way so you can see it better. The reason for that is that the apron lining is going to have your ruffles, and this layer, your apron top, lays over the top of that, and the ruffles kind of poof it up, and it's really cute. And I just love this apron. I love the way it turns out. But now what we're going to do is we're going to put these pockets on. Put that away for the time being. Now what I like to do with this, I take it to the ironing board and I iron it so that there's a seam down the center. And then what I do is I fold it in half again, like this, like that, right? So what I'm going to have when I get done, and I will take this to the ironing board and do that, is that I will have this is the center seam, see right there? And then this other thing that's right in the center of that seam is midway. So you're halfway between the center of the apron and the edge. And so when I do that, then what I do is I take my pockets and I center them. And I found that they fit pretty well like this. So you take your pocket like that, and you'll see this. I'm going to iron this and bring it back and show you what that looks like. This just makes life so much easier. And you probably can't see this very well, but what it looks like is this. Here's the center seam here. Here's one of the pockets. I'm going to lay it right in the center of that. And you can kind of tell because you can see where the roosters are. And I like to have it a little bit up here, a little bit lower there. Take that pocket, lay it right like that. Take our handy dandy pin cushion here and pin this pocket on, and then take this over here. This one you can probably see a little better. See that? And what I'm going to do is the same thing here. Take this in half, lay it right on that. See that little rooster guy? How this is right perfectly below that. And it kind of covers up the little rooster's head down here. Makes him just about perfect. I call that perfect. And that's as perfect as my aprons get. I love my roosters and my chickens. And now your apron kind of sort of looks like it's coming together a little bit. Isn't that cute? Love it. When we get the bodice done and we get the buttons put on the bodice, that's another stage of completeness that just feels so good to have it complete. Okay, I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, put the pockets on, and I'll bring it back and show you what she looks like. And there we go. Pockets are on. Whoops, don't forget to take the pins out. I don't know how many times I've done that. There we go. Isn't that cute? That's going to be the front of our apron. So we're going to put this aside because that's all we need to do to the front of the apron for right now, because the last part is putting the ruffles together. Okay, so now the next part. We're going to work on the bodice. Now, that's the bodice trim and the interfacing there. We put our buttons to the side. This is our bodice and our lining. And you'll notice that I usually serge the top of the bodice, and that should be done in your kit. I try to do that. I don't serge the lining because it doesn't need to be serged, because you're going to sandwich it together. And here, put the lining and the bodice right sides together. Put these in this little baggie here so that I know that I got all my pieces. And line it up pretty good, because and then I like to use my little clips. Clips are so easy. And what I do is I leave the bottom open so I can turn it. Okay, I'm going to stitch it all the way around like that. And let's see, get that up there all the way around, right? And while I'm over at the ironing board, what I'm going to do is, this is the bodice trim, and it has that piece of interfacing, and this is iron-on interfacing, and you can see one side is shiny. Okay, I'm going to put that right next to the center line in this, right? See how that is? Now, what I'm going to do is, I kind of cheat a little bit in this. A lot of people would take this and they would stitch these corners down first, you know, then turn it right side out and do that. You know what, I might do that. I won't be such a lazy man today. I'll do that. I'm going to do that while I'm thinking about it, while I'm going to the sewing machine. I'll show you what I'm doing when I come back, and then we'll iron on the interfacing. I'll show you how that goes. Put that over there. There's the interfacing. Now what we're going to do is, I'm just going to take and do a small seam there, just up to that point, just to the edges, and then I'll turn it right side out. Then I'll show you. I'll bring them back and show you. I'm going to sandwich the interfacing in and get that ready to go. So here, this is going to go over to the sewing machine, and we're going to go up the sides, around the top, leave the bottom open because we're going to use that for turning. Okay, so I stitched that lining, and I took it to the ironing board and I gave it a good little press. So there's your bodice, okay? And then when I was over there, I also took, this is the top trim, and you know, I sewed the edges. I turned it right side out. I made sure it was pointed really good, and you can see how that is. Now, there's a little piece of interfacing here, okay, and it has the shiny side is the sticky side. Don't get that next to your iron. But what I want to do with this is, I'm going to sandwich this in to this top trim piece and push it up in there so that it's right flat, and it should fit right in there. You can cut it down a little bit on the edges if it doesn't fit in there, okay? And just stick it up there lay it down flat. And then I'm going to take it to the ironing board and give that a good, nice press so that stays in there. Because then I'm going to bring it back and we're going to talk about how I attach that to the top of the bodice. Because what we're going to do is this will finish out the top. And then we're going to take the straps, and the straps, they're the neckties, but they're also the sides of this, okay? They're going to go up the side of the bodice, and there's the neckties. It's going to be so cute. Okay, so I'm going to take this back to the ironing board. Give that a good hard press. Get that. That lining in there, really good. Okay. Whew, warm. Now, what I do with my lining, some people do this a little differently than what I do, but I stitch it that way, right? So all the edges are through. You don't have to, but I kind of like the way it looks. Then I turn it back up and I do a top stitch on the top. And because it's all finished on the top and in there, so what you want to do is make sure that, see how you have that little bit hanging over? You want it to be perfectly even, right? So that looks even. I'm going to clip it. I'm going to go back and do a little straight stitch there. I'm going to take it to the ironing board and iron it up, right? And then we're almost done. Then we just have to attach the side ties. Okay, so what I did is I stitched it this way, then I pressed it up, and I pressed that seam allowance there, I pressed it down because I'm going to take it back here. I'm going to stitch it as close as I can get to that line so it stays down, and then I'm going to stitch all the way around to finish that off, okay? And then we'll put the straps on. Then I'll show you how we do the ruching, ruche the button. It's so cute. Okay, I top stitched all of that. The other thing I did is I clipped this little corner off of here because I don't like the way that sticks out. And I also stitched just a line at the bottom. I just like to close this. I mean, you could trim this lining off, but there's no real reason to do that. Now we're going to attach the straps. Now what I do is I lay it on top of this like this because you want it to come over the top because you kind of want it to come in this way. And since I'm a little larger lady and I like to make one size fits all, I like to do them like this, and where I get my extra space is the ruching. So what I do is I lay them out like this. You know, they have a little angle. You can see what's underneath. It lines the front of it like that, right? And then, whoops, guess you can't see me too good. Maybe I'll pull you forward a little. There, that's better. There you go. I'm going to pin this right along this edge because that's where I'm going to sew it. I'm going to sew it right along that edge there, okay? Now, some people, if you're smaller, what you can do is trim this off, just level, and you can stitch it down to the inside and the outside, and it makes your bodice smaller. But I want my bodice to be larger, so I only stitch down on the inside here, but I make sure I catch it because I can feel it where I catch it, and I'll check on the back after I pin it down to make sure I'm pinned in there. I just love this apron style. It is so cute. I was just thinking, this kind of looks like the flag on race day at the racetrack, doesn't it? Yeah. Pinning is always tedious and a little hard for me with arthritis in my hands. Not too bad. And then what I usually do is after I've pinned it, I turn it over on this side to make sure that I've caught the edges of everywhere. This looks good here. This one, did I catch that? Not catch that in the center? Didn't go through. Ouch. Yeah. touch yourself, Doris. And yeah, there we go. See how that is? So that's the way it looks from the back. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? So, okay, so I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew that, and then we're almost finished with the bodice. Then we're going to do the fun part. We're going to do the ruching. And I'm going to hang it on the mannequin. I have two different mannequins that I hang it on. I have one that's my size. It's about a 2X. And then I have another that's about a size 10. I like to hang it on both of those to make sure the bodice looks good on both of them. And then I leave it hanging on that because then when I work on the skirt, I want to get the skirt all finished and lined and everything. And then before I attach the bodice and the skirt together, I hang it up and make sure that it's hitting in the right place, the natural waist, for on somebody who's an extra large or a 2X like I am, or a medium. Small people, extra small, this apron is a little large for that unless they don't mind it being loose or wrapping around them. Those poor things. Alrighty then, now comes the fun part. So what I do is, first I take my little, well, you do a tape measure, but I think I'll do it this way. Sorry. Cut that out when I edit. Put this in half like that so I can find the center. And right there's the center. And we'll put a little pin right there in the center so I know right where that is. Center of the bodice. You seeing this? Center of the bodice. Now what we're going to do, the way this is what makes this such a cute little apron. The ruching, you'll feel this bodice is kind of stiff. Put this down a little bit so I can see it right there. And what happens, and I'll show you on the mannequin, is you can ruche this down once or twice. I kind of like it twice, but what I try to do is, see how that kind of makes it pleated there? What I try to do is, I go like that, finger press it, then I put one of my little clip babies here. It's a little bit itsy. Right there. See how that's going to be? Okay. And it makes it look kind of pleated on both sides, and it gives you a little figure. Now what I'm going to do is get my mannequin, and I will try this little puppy on and see what looks good. And I'll take a couple of pictures and insert them in here so you can see what it's going to look like. Before I put them on. Oh, just love this. I'm going to pin it a little bit in here, and then I'll take a couple pictures and I will put them in the video when I make it. So you can see what it's going to look like with that pinned in there. Then I have to think about the color of button that I want to put in there. And there's that picture. And I'm going to bring my other mannequin over. My size 10. Young lady here. This apron is so cute when it's finished. It's my favorite apron to make. In fact, I stopped making, I used to make lots of different aprons. I stopped making all of my other aprons because this one sold the best and I liked it the best. I enjoyed making it. I got to where I didn't really enjoy making the aprons as much. So I decided, well, I'll just make the ones I enjoy. And I enjoyed this one. So, you know, you get older, you give yourself permission to only do that which gives you pleasure. And this is what gave me pleasure to do. It's so cute. Now take this picture and I'll have it put in the video when you see it. Love it. Now, we are going to have to decide on the button. So what I'm going to do is take this back to the sewing machine, and I will take this and sew it down. Just sew a little line back and forth so that that stays ruched like that. And it's nice because it kind of stands up on its own, right? Now I'm going to measure with my measuring tape just to make sure that is in the center. Even though I fold it in half, I like to double check and be sure. It's almost right at 6 inches, and it's just a tiny bit over 12. So that looks just about perfect. So we're going to sew this, then we're going to pick a button. Isn't that cute? Isn't that the cutest thing you've ever seen? Now comes the fun part, the buttons. You know, you'll find out that I do love my buttons. And see, a black button would be cute there, right? I have 2 black buttons. But this is a vintage red button. Let me take it off the card to pull that out of it. You know, I like to name things. This is Jack. Jack's pink, but this is Jack. Jack and I have spent many hours together. If I work late at night, Jack and I spend the next morning together seam ripping out what I did the night before, because we all know I can't work past 5 o'clock or it gets ripped out the next day. Oh, see, I love that red button. You like that red button there? Now, I do have other buttons. Like I said, I have black buttons, red buttons. I'm going to include a few little tiny buttons. I could frou-frou this up. I could put like little red buttons here, little red buttons there, a few black buttons here, a few black buttons there. But I think I'm going to leave it simple this time and just leave the one red button there. And I don't know where I put my black buttons now. Oh, there they are. So for now, that's what it's going to stay like. I'm going to go put this on, and I will be back with the ruffles. Ruffle Mania is next. Okay, now we're back. And here is the skirt lining. And that's where we're going to start, because as you can see, I've already got it marked right down the center by pressing it. And we have 3 ruffles and an optional ruffle. And I love ruffles, so that I'm going to use that optional ruffle because I love it, and I love ruffles. And because we love ruffles, we can use ruffles. And so what I do is I try to lay everything out so I know what I'm going to do before I do it, and then I take a marking pen and mark how it's going to be. So I have this beautiful white lace ruffle, which is one of my optional ruffles. I have to, you know, I kind of decide where I'm going to put it and what I'm going to do. But see, I try to make my ruffles at least 1.5 and sometimes twice. Let me see, can you see this? I'll move it up like that. I try to make my ruffles be 1.5 to 2 times the width of the skirt because I like them lots of ruffly, especially the underlayering ruffle. Now, I am 5'3". This apron, when I put the 4th ruffle on the bottom, it makes it just a little bit longer for me, which I don't mind. I kind of like that. You're going to want to do that, pin your ruffles on and decide, okay, I wouldn't necessarily pin them on, but measure your length. Like, let's just say that this is my bottom ruffle and it's going to go along the very bottom like this. This will give you an idea of how long your apron's going to be from the waist down. And I'll go measure the bodice in a minute. Okay, that's a little over 20 inches. Now, when I go to the mannequin here, where I have my bodice tied up, from the shoulder down to there is 17 inches. So 20 and 17 is 37 inches. So when I take my shoulder and I come down 37 inches, what I typically do on this is I put a little clip on 37 inches. I put this on my shoulder because that's where it's going to sit. And then I can see where this is going to hit me. And it hits me right below the knee. So that's a nice kind of a long apron. You're a little taller. You can move this down to the very bottom. If you're shorter like me, you could move it up a little bit like that and have them lay over it. I think maybe I will do that first ruffle there, this one, so that it's just a tiny bit below it. So that would be, let's see, from the waist down, it's still about 20 inches down. So that would be a good one. Now, because my bodice is this chicken's, right, I like to have it balanced from the top to the bottom. And so what I will do is, and I'm just laying this like this for look. See, I kind of like that. See how that just lets this show on the bottom? And because remember now it's going to be ruffled up, ruched up. And then I have my next ruffle. And what I'm going to do with that, I like this black ruffle. And oh, by the way, you can finish the edges of these ruffles if you want. I think I have in my kit, I try to serge the edges of them, and I leave that as a serge. That's kind of a serge rolled hem. You don't have to finish it any more than that. The lace, of course, you don't have to finish. If you want to roll that under 1/4 inch and then stitch it down, you can do that. That's okay. But I like them like that. I think it's kind of cute. Now, I like seeing my roosters, see? So I'd want that ruffle to hit right there. And then I have my last ruffle, which is checked. And this is like the waist straps are checked. Now, what I probably do with this is I only show a little bit of the black and I lay that right over it. Now, the thing to remember is you have an overskirt on this. And so after you lay out your ruffles where you think you want them to be, then you take your overskirt, and this, remember, is going to be up here on the top. Now see, what happens with the overskirt is if you put this in the center of that like that, you see how you're not even going to see that top ruffle, right? But what happens is when you put these ruffles in and they're kind of ruffled up, right, it raises this up a little bit. So what happens is, I'll show you, put this there like that, not quite in the center. There's this pretty much the center. Now see how this is? This comes up and down like that, right? So you won't see any of that other one. So we have to adjust these ruffles. So I probably would make it a little longer, and I can take the, if I don't like it that long, I can make this waist that comes, I can make it come up underneath the bodice so that it's shorter. The apron is shorter itself. Okay. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to make this lace come down a little longer, right? Make a little longer apron, just a little bit. I'm going to move this guy down so that it just hits. Now remember, they will be brought up a little bit because it'll be like that. Then I'm going to take this so you can still see it. Now remember, there will be a little more sidings like that. Yes, see, so what I want is I want it just, all of the ruffles, this just to peek out from underneath that. And that will just peek out, because then you can do a little shabby pin and pull it up and ruche it up down here a little bit. Because when you put it on, it'll naturally come up and the ruffles will naturally raise everything up. So this is kind of how I want my ruffles. Now what I need to do, besides trim off those little tails, is mark on here where I want them to come. So sometimes I do that with pins. I do have some markers that are water soluble markers. Let's see if I have one that I think you'll be able to see. What I like to do is, see how this is? I can see where I want the top of that to be. Maybe you can't see this over here. Yeah, I guess you can. Move it over. Yeah, right there. See where I want the top of this ruffle to be. I want that top one to be right there. I'm going to put a pin there too. Doesn't show as well as what I wanted it to. And that says, okay, that's where the top of that ruffle's going to be. And see, this one's going to be right underneath it, the same one. See, they'll kind of be right on top of each other, so I'm not going to worry about that. Then the rooster one is going to be right here. So that's going to remind me that that's 2. And then the rooster's there. Okay. And then the lace is right there. So that's where the lace is going to go. Now, what I'm going to do with this, now that I got those marked, and I know this is the order I want everything in. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one, move it over here like this. I'm going to make those same markings, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the ruffles. I'm also going to then do this, make those, to put a line across, make those same marks on the center point. So you got to do it from the waist down to do that, right? Where they'll come at the waist, so that when you're putting your ruffles on, then you make sure that you've got them all straight across. Now, I'm going to finish marking this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each one of my ruffles over to my sewing machine, and at the top I'm going to do the longest stitch, so it's a gathering stitch. Now, because these are in half like this, it's naturally got that halfway mark, and when I pin them on, the ruffles on, and I go to ruffle them up, the ends will be pinned, and then this will be pinned in the center, and then I can ruffle it and make sure it's even. So I do one ruffle at a time. I have this all marked, so I put up the lace on first, then I lay out the roosters. That goes on next, then the black, and then the checked. And then we'll do the overskirt, then the waistband, and we're finished. But for right now, I'm gonna go prep my ruffles. So, we already marked this with the pins for where the ruffles are going to go. So I gathered this, going to get on the right hand side. Lace is always difficult to tell right hand side from left hand side. Yep. This is the right side. Now I am marked on the lace right where the center was, and that's right here. And I had it here, you know, I don't think this is quite right, because when I did it like this, oh no, this is right, because that one was gonna go like that, and this, when we do this, it's just gonna show a little bit of that lace ruffle. So what we wanted to do was do that for ruffle 1. I like laying them out before I pin them, because you do them one ruffle at a time, and then there is where the second ruffle is going to be. It's going to be where it just is, it just has this a little bit below it. Okay, all the way across. And then we are going to have this ruffle. There's my black ruffle. Ah, there we are. We're going to have the black ruffle be right above it, just so that we show the roosters a little bit. And then we're going to have this little checkered ruffle be right on top of that. So the ruffles just kind of peek out. So that's the way the ruffles are going to lay. And I think that's perfect. Perfect, perfect. So we do the ruffles one at a time. Lay them like that. Lay it like that. Lay it like that. And this one, because my little halfway dot is right, hard to see, but it's right there on it. And so what I do is I pin that in place, okay? And then I come over here and I start pulling on that one string, and I pull it towards the center. I do from one side and then the other side. And I'm going to do this for all of the ruffles. Take them to the sewing machine, sew them on, and I like to have them kind of evenly distributed, but really you're not going to notice it as much when you have this many ruffles one over the top of the other. So carefully pull on that little string. I don't do the two rows like some people do, because this is easy gathering and you don't have to worry about it falling off. And then I keep it a little way away from the edge, because when you do put the top piece over the lining, you're going to sew that to the edges and you don't want to catch your ruffle in that. So we will do this way. There's the edge of that ruffle, right like that. And it's just up a little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. Get my pins out. The placement of the first ruffle is really the most important, because that's going to line up where all of the other ruffles, you know, pretty much line up. It's not an exact science. You don't have to worry. You just have to make sure that they're sort of kind of straight and even. It can be a little walky. It's not going to be the end of the world, because you won't see the top of it, because remember, the other ruffle is going to come down over the top. And I usually turn that back a little bit on the edge there, like that, that. Keep that a little there. I like this gathered here in the center a little bit, so it shows up. This is the fun part, because this is when you really see your apron start coming together. And I love the little lace. I like putting in a little optional special ruffle in the kits so that you can have a little fun with it. If you prefer a plainer apron, you don't have to put this bottom ruffle on, but I like to do that. Okay, so I'm going to take this to the machine, sew this first ruffle on, and then I'll be back. And there we are. The first little ruffle sewn on there. I'm going to trim off these little edge things here. As soon as I find the scissors, there we go. It helps to trim your little edges, your threads as you go along. Otherwise, you'll have little threads sticking out everywhere that you got to trim afterwards. There, it looks so cute. Alrighty. Now the next one up is our rooster ruffle. I love our rooster ruffle. And here's our little dot that shows the center. And remember, this one is going to go right there. And what you really want to do is just have that little lacy ruffle peeking out underneath. And you'll see that as you go along. And of course, we put our pins here so that we know where everything is. See how that looks so cute? Just that little white ruffle showing up underneath. So we're going to pin this one. And I will put this right in the center right here. And again, I only pull on the one string to gather it. And I gather it towards the center. And again, I keep it away from the very edge a little bit because we are gonna sew over that when we put the top piece on, and you know, we don't want to catch it in that. And there we go for that one. This looks so cute with that little lacy bit showing up. I love our little lacy bits. Like I said, I like it gathered a little more towards the center because that's where you're going to see it the most, the gathering, because that's where your apron kind of pops up under there. Just want this about an inch away from the side edge because that's where you're going to have that apron overlay come down. This is so cute. I just love it. Is that there? Kind of even out your ruffles a little bit, just so that it's just, you know, a little bit over that bottom there. I love it. Love my little gathers and my ruffles. Isn't that cute? Look at that. Yes, right along there. There, sewing machine. There we go. So cute. Look at that. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, and then the next ruffle we're gonna have is the black one. And again, we go for the center. Now, the most important thing about this is I kind of want my little roosters to show up a little bit. So I want to make sure that it's along those lines. And it is right here. Put that right there like that. Again, I like that ruffliness to be right there and most ruffled in the center. And because this gets narrower as you go up, these top ruffles will be a little more ruffled in than what the bottom ones are. And again, you want to stay about an inch away from the edge here because you're going to have that apron overlay come down over the top. There we are. Put that there. So cute. Now we'll gather it from this side. And I like the gathers, like I said, I like them to be pretty even, but I like to be concentrate a little more in the center. Stay an inch away from the sides. Make sure your little roosters kind of show up. little pin here. Looks pretty good. Take a sewing machine. So cute. Just look at that. Isn't that a cutie? Isn't that a cutie? Looky, looky, looky. Yeah. Now, the last little one here. Here's the center. That's the way it's supposed to be. So, doing this one is pretty easy because it sits right on top of that other ruffle. And the ruffles, when I do cut them out, the top one, you'll notice, is just a little bit shorter than these others. They're a little wider, and that's so that they kind of lay over the top of each other like this. Pull that. And you'll notice, because of the A-line of this apron, the top ruffles will ruffle a little more because they're the same. All the ruffles are the same length. They're not the same width. But when they lay down, because of this A-line, the top ones ruffle a little more, which is kind of nice because they just kind of bop over the top like that. It's just perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Couldn't be any more perfect than that. I say that's perfect? Yes, it's kind of perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Ah, we just love this. I'm a ruffly gal. I really like ruffles. I think they just add so much to an outfit. Now, my daughter's not a fan of ruffles. And I think if you're a little larger, maybe the ruffles aren't quite as flattering, but because this is on the bottom of the apron, I actually think it draws the eye down. And I like that. I like the ruffles. Gives it a little more distinctiveness, I think. But anyway, that's my opinion. And welcome to it. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. See how these are so cute. Just look at that. Yes, and I can feel underneath there. I can feel right where the top of that other ruffle is, and that's kind of where you want this to sit. And see, just a little bit peeking out. Doesn't have to be perfect, perfect. Few things in life are perfect. Of course, I'm perfect. We all know I'm perfect. The way I think you can see it a little better. Isn't that the cutest little thing? See? It's so cute. Okay. Now, what we do with this is this apron overlay. See how it's going to be when I attach it up here at the top. See how that is? Isn't that perfect, the way that it's just kind of over there like that? But now what you do is you take the wrong side of the apron up, and we're going to put right side to wrong side, because when we flip it over, right, over the other way, you will see what it's going to look like. So we will make sure that the centers align. Here's the center, and here's the center there. Okay, and then put the edges like this, the edges like that. We're going to make a little apron sandwich here. Now, what I typically do is this. Do that way, and because what we're really doing is we're stitching down the sides so we can flip it over. Then we'll stitch down the top when we go to make the waistband. So we won't stitch that first. So what we're doing here, and this is just perfect, because see how that just fits? And then you're going to flip it over. Same thing here. Just perfect. Now the top I clipped like that just to keep it together, but you're not going to sew that yet. That gets sewn after you flip it over. So you have the right side of the apron to the back side of the lining, and you've got the edges all clipped down. So now we're going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to sew both edges. Leave this open because we're going to flip it. I just did that so it'll stay together. And then take these little clips out of the waist up here. Okay. Now we're going to see what this apron's really going to look like. Isn't that cute? Oh my gosh. Oh, we missed clipping the thread. That's okay. Look at that. Isn't that the cutest little thing? And see how perfect that is? How it just kind of goes up and down, you know, here. So perfect. Now, you'll notice I'm going to take this to the ironing board and I'm going to iron these edges down here and this edge down here so that it just kind of stays like that. And then when we put the waistband on, we'll make sure everything is just perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So cute. So cute. What I've mentioned is when I take this to the ironing board, I make sure that the center of the lining and the center of the top apron are lined up together, right? You want to make sure you do that because when you put your waistband on, that'll be important. And then I'm going to iron that. I'm going to iron the sides just so that I like everything to be ironed and neat. Here we go. Isn't that cute? Now, the next step. We only have 2 more steps to go. Okay? And here is the waistband. All right? And here is the lining, the facing, inner facing. And it has the shiny side. And so you put the shiny side down against the fabric. Now what I like to do is this, okay? I like to I will take this to the ironing board first. And see this, you don't need to have interfacing over here. But I already have this pressed, so I know where the middle of it is, right? So I am going to make sure that there's enough away that this kind of matches up with the center line. I don't know if I'm showing this on here. Yes, you can see this. This matches up with the center line. Now what I'm going to be doing is, after I iron on the interfacing, then this will go right in the center. I'll measure the center of it and I will stitch it on the front, okay? And this is the front waistband, which is nice because I like that stiffness in the front. Then I'll fold it over and then I'll stitch along here, along the front. And what that will, I'll show you the way that I have it folded over. It'll catch it on the back. That's kind of a lot of words for what I'm saying. I'm gonna go iron this interfacing on, and then I'll be back. Now sometimes I do this the lazy way. And okay, so let's find the center. I don't like teaching people how to do things my lazy way, but lazy way is usually a little faster way, so some people like to know the lazy way. And it doesn't really matter because it's going to be covered. Okay, so you know I talked about it being open and I stitch it here and then fold it over. Well, I'm going to do mine the lazy way today. So there's the center. And there's the center at the top of the apron. Now you see how mine kind of sits over the edges? Okay, I do that on purpose because I like my waist ties to be extra long. And so what I do with the waist ties is I kind of tuck them in there, right? And this, what I'm gonna do is do it one step. I'm gonna stitch it all the way across, stand it up, and then do the top facing that way. It's just easier. It's a little faster, and there's no reason to not do it that way. And it's going to look so cute. Ah. Now, like I said, I do leave these ends like this open a little bit here because I am going to stick the waist ties in there. And it's easier if you leave a little bit open. But we'll take this to the sewing machine, sew it along here, stitch it, then I'll stand it up, and then I'll top stitch it. Okay, and there's the waistband. Now, what I'm going to do is take it back to the sewing machine. I press that down towards the bottom of the apron, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to stitch right close to this line, but kind of right below it so we catch that. So this, and then I left this open a little bit because then I'm going to tuck my apron ties into the end here. I'm actually going to turn this under, okay, like that. That finishes that off, that edge. I'll tuck this in like that and go like this and finish that off. And then I will finish off this top stitching here, but I'm going to do that after I decide the placement on the bodice. Since I already have this stuck in here like this, I'm going to go ahead and put a little clip there, a little pin, since I already went to the bother of doing that. So when I take the sewing machine, I can go ahead and sew my waist ties in at the same time. Here again, I'm folding this in to finish those edges. That just gives it a little more finished look. Tuck that waist tie in. That. Pin that. There we go. Take it back to the sewing machine, stitch along here, put the ties on, and then all we have to do is look at the fitting on the mannequin and attach the bodice. We'll be okay. I've got the apron skirt all sewn, and I have Ethel modeling my apron for you. And with this, oops, with this you can see how cute that apron skirt is. I haven't attached it yet. What I did is I tied it on here, and then I'm going to pin it because I like where that waistband hits. And I like that you can see the full roosters. Now what I'm going to do though is I'm going to pin the apron to the bodice right there. Then I'm going to take it off of Ethel and I'm going to put it on Dee Dee. That's my medium-sized apron model, because I want to see that if I pin it on there and I sew it like that, is it also going to fit a size medium as well as a plus size. And you can see I make my ties long. They're tied, they go around the back and come back around the front and tie. So I like that. You know, if you want your apron strings shorter, you can always cut them off and serge that finish the edges, make it shorter, tie it in the back. But I like my aprons tied around in the front, and I make them plenty big enough to be able to do that. And here is Dee Dee all dressed up in the apron, and you can see that that fits her pretty good too right there. So I know that that's the correct waistband placement. So what I'll be doing is taking this back to the sewing machine, sewing the waistband on along here, and then I'll probably check on the inside. I might do another row of stitching, another row of stitching along here, just to make sure that that waistband is secure. And then we're finished, all finished except picture taken.